All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Designing the CMMS for Excellence in Asset Management. We're so excited that you could join us. We'll hit the next slide button here, please. Oh, there we go. All right, so some quick housekeeping today before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and the slides and the recording will be mailed to you afterwards, so keep an eye out in your inbox for that. Q&A will be throughout the session, so drop your questions in the question box as they come up. Don't be shy. John is more than happy to answer questions throughout the presentation, so absolutely no need to hold those to the end. And then please tell us how we did. So at the end of the session, I'll be sending out a link and I'll also drop it in the chat. For a quick 2-minute survey, we would just love to hear your feedback so we can keep putting on great events like this one. All right, so to introduce you to our speaker today, so excited to have John join us. John, for the last 3.5 decades, has been at the center of asset management and reliability. Prior to becoming a CMMS consultant, John worked in the engineering division of a nuclear submarine and scheduling supervisor at a nuclear power plant. John is also a certified reliability leader and certified maintenance manager. His career objective is to merge the two worlds of CMMS technology and maintenance and reliability professionals in support of asset reliability, workforce productivity, and job safety. John, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, Maura. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Maura Mellis, and I am your moderator today. I will be reading out all of your wonderful questions to John, and I'm the Growth Marketing Manager here at Upkeep. So my goal is to keep providing you all with great content like this. So please, as I mentioned, fill out that survey and let me know what you'd like to see next.
John? Excellent. Well, thank you, Maura. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those perhaps around the world. I've made a few notes here I wanted to start with, and let me say this. I've implemented my fair share of CMMS software, and as a software consultant, I've always felt I could have helped the customer more. It was obvious to the client project manager sometimes that he was asking for additional knowledge beyond just the software navigation. And what was that knowledge he was asking for? Well, he was asking for industry best practice knowledge. But I must say, as a young and very green consultant, the vendor boot camp never talked about a reliability framework within an asset management system. And as I found out soon enough, it was up to the individual consultant to discover this knowledge on their own and become a lifelong student of asset management. So here we are, 3 decades later. It seems this issue is still relevant. So in this presentation, I hope to share knowledge regarding the integration of two worlds. You have the reliability professionals, maintenance and reliability professionals, and also the CMMS practitioners, the techies. What if they sat in the same office? What if they spoke a common language? What if they designed the CMMS for extracting knowledge and managing by exception? So my advice to anyone starting out in this world of asset management, if this is in fact your career or hope to be career, imagine future perfect and ask why not. This presentation will hopefully give you some things to think about. Okay, so we'll start with reports and KPIs as they facilitate decision making. And the software vendor sells a product and it does whatever it does, but perhaps you, the user community, should be involved in how you will use it, what features and functions will be active, and what roles your strategic personnel will be playing. So we should ask senior level and mid-level management and even the working level as to what information they need from this system. So here's some tips, sample KPIs that I believe are important. If you had multiple sites and from the corporate level you want to do a comparison KPI, I like reactive maintenance. Of course, now you're going to need a definition for that. So we're comparing apples to apples, right? Backlog size, and not just work order count, but by craft estimate. Percent planned versus unplanned in the backlog. That's a good one. Weekly schedule compliance. Of course, you're going to need to have a formal weekly schedule before you can talk about compliance. Now, the indicator that I am most fond of is the SMRP #1 economic indicator, and that is average annual maintenance cost divided by replacement cost. And that would identify the bad actors or top 10 list or whatever, and then enable the reliability team to start focusing where they need to be focusing. You know, you have limited resources at a given site. You just can't focus on all 15,000 assets. So in summary, the KPIs need to have a clear definition as to interpretation, and someone at some point needs to convert it to SQL so it's quite clear as to what's being selected to create that statistic. Last point, be aware that poorly designed KPIs can actually drive bad behavior. And that would be a great question to ask the audience. Let's see, Maura, if anyone has an example of that right now. Maybe not, but if they do, well, it'd be good to hear.
Yeah, if anybody has an example, we'll post it in Dropbox.
And if we run out of time right now, just make that for a future question, and we'll get that towards the end of the presentation. So, what do you think, audience?
I see.
Oh, you have one. Go ahead. Great.
Yeah. Average time to complete work orders.
One more time.
Average time to complete work orders.
Yes. So, okay. My take on a similar KPI that draws bad behavior is where management is asking the workforce to be productive, and so they start tracking the hours charged in a given shift, a given day. If you're working 8-hour shifts, they want to make sure that all of the work orders come close to 8 hours. Unfortunately, the maintenance staff sometimes, sometimes they start padding their jobs, and just so that they can make it add up to 8, and the results are not totally accurate. Yeah, that's my only example at this point. I'm going to go on. So if I ask the audience to identify two of the most significant goals that a CMMS might have, what would they be? And I provided my own answer here, and I'm suggesting it could be failure analysis and workforce productivity. So how does one go about pursuing those goals in the CMMS system? Now, I'm going to single out failure analysis for right now. And if you allow me to do so, what would the end game look like for failure analysis? If that's in fact something that's very important to your organization. Well, my thought is to have a formal reliability team. They meet monthly and they run a bad actor report and identify the top 10 assets using that SMRP metric, perhaps. And once they have that particular asset they want to focus on, they then can take their mouse and click on that asset, and on that screen, on that report, on the overhead, the screen will suddenly change and show a pie chart. And the pie chart would show the failed component within the failure mode, and the component problem, and the cause code. And so they'd be able to drill down to the root cause and then take action to prevent repeat failures. Yeah, the purpose of the software is not just to make work orders. The purpose of the software is not just to track workers and worker hours charged. The purpose should be just what we've stated here, which is to manage by exception. And so how would all of this come together? Well, there are a lot of prerequisites. You got to be capturing proper failure data on the work order. And And to do that metric that I mentioned a moment ago, we've got to have that replacement cost on all assets. Well, you might need to have a reliability team. You can't be given this bad actor report to the planners and expect them to perform this analysis. Well, you could, but I recommend a reliability team. And then you need to design the bad actor report. If that already exists in your CMMS, well, then good. And if that report can process that economic indicator, that's all the better. And so there's the reliability team, and there's the blue box at the upper right-hand corner. Now, this is we're going to tell a story here. So a lot of you have been in the business for a long time, and some of you are in leadership. So imagine you're standing rather at the front of that table, and you've got this CMMS, but you've tried to pull some reports out of the system to identify the bad actors, but you're struggling to do that. You want to be able to drill down and see the actual failure mode and cause. And so he's asking a question to all of his direct reports. Can somebody please tell me why we can't pull a bad actor report directly from this product? Okay, so the O&M director says, yes, sir, but this will be difficult. We do not have good failure data. Okay, that doesn't make this guy happy. The director of engineering says, well, quite frankly, there is no analytical report in the system that is of any value. Further, the reliability team considers the CMMS not detailed enough for analysis. It has text, but it's not validated data that you can aggregate, and drill down on. IT director, he's a pretty savvy guy. He says, well, do we buy the wrong software? Is it the software that is limiting our ability to manage by exception? Good question. Reliability engineer, in retrospect, we implemented the product. They never invited me to the implementation discussion. Oh, geez, that's pretty serious. But hang on, maybe he should have volunteered himself and walked into that meeting and stated the importance of his input. Okay, business analyst says, is there anything more important than failure analysis and discovery? A good question, business analyst. Good stuff. So that's how a conversation could go. And this guy, the leader here in charge, is a little bit frustrated, and he wants this group to get their act together. When I was a very young consultant, like I said, 3 decades ago, silly me, I used to think this software would actually push a button and it would tell you, hey, here's the asset. Look at this. This is the most problematic asset, rather, and you need to focus here. Well, there's nothing like that, obviously, in the system, and this is a very silly cartoon picture, but there's no magic hand going to jump out and say, look here, this is the most problematic asset. So we do have a poll question, and I think it's going to pertain to scheduling. Maura, are you able to pull that up?
Yep, I'm going to publish it right now. All right, so everybody should be seeing a poll question in the polls tab or perhaps on your screen. So please respond to that poll. And the poll question is, the purpose of a weekly maintenance schedule is to, and there's a few different answers. So it's to either perform high priority work, to create 5 daily plans with assignments in advance, to maximize craft resources and optimize backlog reduction, or to ensure PM work is performed on time. And I see some answers coming in here. So we'll give this like maybe another 20 seconds just to give everybody a chance to fill it out. I see lots of answers coming in. So this is great. Thanks everybody for participating. Still seeing some come in here. Looks like everybody found the poll, which is great. All right, we'll give it about 10 more seconds. And all right, so John, in first place, and I'll remind everybody of the question here, the purpose of a weekly maintenance schedule is to, it's actually pretty close. So 44% of our responses went to maximize craft resources and optimize backlog reduction, closely followed by 33% of the responses, which were for ensure PM work is performed on time.
Okay. All right. Wow. Boy, this would be a great workshop just for this subject alone. And thanks for answering. I will say it. You know, this can come down to the consultant's experience and personal preference on this definition. And the audience, 44% here, has chosen the one that I would have chosen. So, okay, good stuff. Maximize craft resources and optimize backlog reduction. PMs are definitely important, and that's a close second. The one I'm fearful of is the 5 daily plans, and I have the highest regard for professionals in industry that even software vendors that's their recommended strategy. I don't know what to say. That's their opinion. I respect them, but I'm not sure it's always a good thing to create 5 daily plans 1 week in advance because there's so much volatility and dynamics in your plan. Okay, I'm ready to go on. This slide here, if you have any coffee nearby, this is a time to take a drink of that coffee. And this is going to hopefully not put you to sleep, but I'll try to be interesting here. Wouldn't it be great if we can create a living program for RCM inside the CMMS and perform RCM analysis? Some may know what that is, some may not, but very quickly, it's a facilitator arrives on site. They go after a critical system that you've identified, and they're going to ask your team members in a week-long session, focusing on that one system, looking at P&IDs and all of the assets within it, and asking, well, number one, for this asset right here, what are the expected functions? Okay, and you list those out. And then for each of the functions, what are the possible functional failures that could occur within each function? And then within that, for the top one, you identify what are the possible failure modes. And that's what we're about to focus on. And it goes on. Eventually, there's also failure effects, but there's also strategies. So the strategies are verbalized at the end of that Q&A. And again, the facilitator puts this all in an Excel spreadsheet. Coming back to the failure mode, the facilitator has this one column and it says bearing failed or whatever, bearing ceased, right? So it's a half a sentence, it's a phrase, whatever you want to call it. I'm suggesting that we break this up into separate pieces. And so before I get to the 3-piece definition from the book there at the bottom, RCM Blitz, there is a standard called SAE JA 1011 12, and it absolutely defines the failure mode, and it talks about these 3 pieces. Now, neither the blue or the green suggest what I'm about to suggest here, which is to split the failure mode into the 3 validated fields, which is the failed component, the component problem, and the cause code. And if you were a reliability engineer or a member of the reliability team, when you're running the bad actor report, would this information be of value to you? I hope the answer is yes. So the book at the bottom defines the 3-piece failure mode, emphasizes its importance. And when I read that book, written by Douglas Plucknett, it became obvious to me that this would be a great idea design-wise to incorporate into the CMMS. So now keep that thought there for a moment. We'll come back to that. There's another design feature that I'm suggesting, and that is to create a brand new RCM analysis application inside the CMMS. So the Excel spreadsheet that the facilitator, Douglas is the facilitator, creates and populates, how about we upload that and store it directly inside the CMMS? Well, why would you want to do that? Now, we can, when we start to create our PM job plan library, we can, it's all in the same software. It's very easy to create links going back and forth. You're just one click away from when you want to do validation. So now you can create a defendable PM strategy. By on each PM, you would identify the failure mode or failure modes that it's mitigating. Yeah, it's all in one system, speaking the same language. What do we got next? Now, I could be wrong here with this statement, but so far I have not seen any CMMS product that properly recognizes the three-piece failure mode. Okay, and furthermore, now there are failure code hierarchies, but it's not practical to store a failure mode inside an hierarchy due to the size of that hierarchy that eventually is created. It just becomes too onerous. And so what I'm recommending is that we just add new fields which are validated for the failed component, the component problem, and the cost code. We may not have time to get into that in this session, but if those on this conference call are interested, you can send me an email afterwards, and I'd be glad to explain how that is done. I do have a book, Failure Modes to Failure Codes, which also discusses this. Anyways, coming upper left-hand screen corner of the screen now, we have, we're at a live plant, production plant rather, and the work orders are being created every hour of the day. That work order is linked to an asset, and a functional failure has occurred, and now this job gets eventually scheduled and put on the weekly schedule that we just talked about in the poll. And then the supervisor converts that into a daily plan just prior to the shift start and hands out the work orders in progress status. The workers go perform the job, and now the job's done. Tech enters the failure data, but I'm going to call it failure mode on the work order. And this is a job that has a functional failure, so therefore we can mandate this entry. There could be someone in the audience that's thinking, hang on, John, does the tech know the cause in all cases? No, not necessarily. And so there would be other people involved in updating this record. And again, that's a conversation we could have offline. I have additional information to share in that regard. But here's a neat feature now. I'm really excited about this. I hope you are. So the work order is saved. The failure mode's entered. That instant it's saved, an automation script can compare that value to the failure mode that's in the RCM app. So if it's not there, then it would be electronically routed to the reliability team or engineer for analysis. And maybe they will one-off start adding these things. And so you're building an RCM application content-wise, one record at a time. Nothing wrong with that. Pennies on the dollar. All right. Oh, another scenario, tech enters the failure mode, come down here. This failure mode, the same one he entered for the same asset, is there. Well, why did that happen? Did we not have the right PM strategy? And so again, I'm going to route this to the reliability engineer, and we're going to have a discussion. So this is all in one system here. You've got the work order, you got the PM, and the RCM app, and they all have a common join here, which is on the failure mode. Okay, now here comes our reliability team performing chronic failure analysis. In the monthly meeting, they run the bad actor report, which again, make another note. If anyone in the audience wants to see an example of that report, I'm glad to answer. And they sort on this SMRP economic indicator. Top 10 bad assets come to the top of the screen. They click on it, and then they drill down on the three-piece failure mode and arrive at the cause. They take action, refine maintenance strategies. And so all of these lines coming back to the green rectangle in the middle gives us a living program for RCM. I am so excited about this design. I'm sorry it took so long to explain, but wouldn't it be great if you had a system that did this? So the main thing for me is the failure analysis and that's the gist of what we're talking about today. So I heard this from somebody recently: keep the main thing the main thing. Any questions at this point, Maura?
I have
Good.
everybody in the they can submit any questions they have in the questions tab as they come up, and that we'd be happy to answer it throughout. So
okay. Now, similar to that living program, let's create a bigger picture called a closed loop system that also supports continuous refinement in maintenance strategies. So this is called asset performance management, and we need to properly set up the asset registry, classification, standard modifier dictionary, taxonomy, whatever terms you like. Also start gathering asset condition data and implement service level agreements where appropriate, warranty data perhaps, and I'd like to apply a asset criticality, which I call business risk exposure. That's a numeric. Okay, then there's our RCM analysis application that we just talked about a moment ago. And then we set up the PM application and the job plans in your CMMS. That's easy enough. And now we got the work order failure mode, the SMRP metric, the bad actor report, and things start happening. So this is what we got. Root cause, yes.
So I have a question from Mike. He says, does any current CMMS have the functionality you just described?
Oh, Mike. Well, there's quite a lot now. On that previous screen, there's a lot of functionality, and I have not yet seen this design. So I must confess, I'm describing something that's what I call future perfect, a future perfect model. But I hope you would appreciate the fact that at least I'm giving you ideas as to what that a good design would look like. So that should be the takeaway.
Another question from Hank. He asks, aren't there APM applications that link to your CMMS that provide RCM and asset strategy links?
Oh, there definitely are. Yes, there is a lot of great vendors, a lot of great programs, APM vendors, asset performance management, that are attached to the CMMS. You have to set up the integration. But keep in mind now, we're focusing on capturing a three-piece failure mode. The external software may or may not do that. Now, they have pre-built libraries, which is something I don't have, and they also can perform WIBO analysis, perhaps, something that we don't normally do inside the CMS. So I think we could still, any organization could benefit by purchasing an add-on APM program and getting it thoroughly integrated, and that's good. I have no fault with that.
All right, that's it on questions for now. Remember to keep posting in the questions tab.
All right. All right. So some organizations, well, every organization is familiar with root cause analysis. It's a big deal. A major event has occurred at your site, and you're going to have a team of people look at it, and it's not something you can do in an hour. There has to be an investigation. The point I want to make is you just can't be doing an RCA on every functional failure that comes across in the system. So that's what I'm addressing. Chronic failure analysis is those breakdowns that are not an RCA event. But you better be sure you can focus on them, because that's where the majority of your costs may reside. All right. So that's the chronic failure analysis we've been discussing. Now, there's also formal work order feedback. And so you may be surprised or may not be surprised how much knowledge the techs have. But if you don't ask for it, they're not going to tell you. Now, they can talk to you verbally, they can send you emails, but why don't we design the system to properly capture this feedback? And what would be examples of this feedback? So we've got PM frequency. We've got the PM strategy itself. There's something called maintainability. Design flaw. Can you believe that a tech would understand that there's a design flaw in this asset? Yeah, let's ask them if that exists. There could be operability issues from an operations standpoint. And so there could be hazards that were not properly identified on the work plan. Yeah, so the safety plan was not properly created by the people in charge of that. Okay, there could be energy efficiency issues, and there could be something called ergonomics. 3 Mile Island. That's what we called it. So there you go. That's my list of examples for work order feedback. And if you could formally capture that in validated fields in the CMMS, now you can electronically route those things to the proper people.
I have another question for you, John.
Yes, please.
Elliton. He says, that's a great point, having this ideal flow. Now, how can we sell it to senior management to justify the implementation of this structure?
Oh, man, that's okay. These questions are getting harder, Maura. All right, so all right, that is really a great question, and I have put a fair amount of thought into this. And one approach is to try to get many of your stakeholders in the field of asset management certified in reliability, and that approach can work. And so you create a groundswell, and you're all speaking the same language, and then you can ask for a meeting with the plant manager and key people at the top, and hopefully go in there with the plan of attack. Now, the other approach is maybe it's just one or two guys that girls or guys that have gotten this qualification and received this advanced training here that we're talking about right now. And so how would you go about this? Well, start identifying all of the possible business improvement initiatives, which could be software, data, process, procedure, roles, responsibilities, anything in that area. And you convert this into a roadmap showing a sequence of things, and eventually you convert it into a long-range plan, which is a real schedule. That your question is important and deserves a longer answer. I'm hurrying with my answer right now, but you take that long-range plan into the plant manager's office, and you use that as a talking point, and hopefully at the end of the dialogue, he says, "Well, what should we do first, and how can I help?"
Sounds like there might be an opportunity for a follow-up session on this topic.
Yeah, that was the best question yet. That person gets to go home early today, whoever asked that. All right. So chronic failure analysis, again, that's what I've been hitting on so far. Defect elimination. This may be new to many people on the call, or maybe it's not. Maybe you're familiar with this. But wouldn't it be great if you could eliminate breakdowns before they even occur? Identify these defects before they become an issue, and mitigate them early in the process. And so defect elimination might be a system walk down. The maintenance manager and the operations manager would single out one or two people for the week, and along with the reliability engineer, and as a small team, they would do this walk down. There's many approaches to defect elimination, and there's a lot of professionals that have their own strategy for doing it. But just let me leave it there. Defect elimination can be most helpful, and it's just one more method to optimize the RCM analysis data. Okay, and this all goes to the reliability team, and that's why they're so important, because they make this closed loop process work. All right, industry best practice knowledge. Well, who the heck am I to say, well, this is the by golly best practice knowledge? Your question's valid. I'm not any smarter than anyone else, but I am older though. So okay, so I've been in the field for 3.5 decades consulting. I think that's a fairly long time. All industries around the world, and it's been a lot of fun. And so I've seen best practices, and I've also seen bad practices. And you start to make mental notes. I've always done the best I could to document this on my laptop over time, and put it in the right folders, and so that I can quickly recover and create solutions over time. I didn't have these ideas day one. It took me a long time to get to this point. I do have a U.S. patent in maintenance scheduling, And this design here for the living program on RCM, I think, is quite unique. So at the top, we've got return on asset. I mean, the profitability, that is the end game. And supporting that is management by exception. Continuous improvement is also supportive of this process. Asset performance, worker safety, yeah. Chronic failure analysis, and productivity. So we need this reliability team, bad actor report, failure mode, granularity on the work order. I have something I haven't talked about here in this session, but it's an automated weekly schedule, which can be generated with one click inside the CMMS. Okay, RCM failure mode and strategies app. We definitely talked about that. Failure mode on the work order feedback, and then operations people. How do they communicate to the maintenance staff? Well, tell me what needs to be dispatched, but also everything else is routine and can be plannable. I need a clear problem code because you are reporting it. And if there's a functional failure, which there would be 90% of the time from these guys, mark it accordingly. And then that comes over to the maintenance staff, and they convert it to a work order and go from there. ODR, we didn't talk about that, but that's operator-driven reliability. Wouldn't it be great if they could perform some minor maintenance, such as changing filters and so on, to free up our maintenance staff to do more complex tasks? There's a defect of limb. Data quality plan. I would say right now, 90% of all sites have no data quality plan. Now, if you're asking, well, what the heck is that? Again, I'm glad to talk further about that. I just sent an email. And within the data quality plan, there's a RACI chart, responsible, accountable. That's the most important part of that. And a utilization plan. There are sites here that have a CMMS, and the product is quite powerful, but they've never activated warehouse inventory automatic reorder. Come to find out, well, why didn't you? Well, we never got around to entering the reorder points, economic order quantities, safety levels, lead times, etc. So, yeah, I could go on with the dialogue, but they're losing a lot of man hours doing that as a manual process each month or however often they're doing it. Foundation data is extremely important, as well as transaction data, and you should be linking inputs to outputs so that this all lines up. You can go live on the new CMMS product, but still be populating the foundation data. All right, over here, the BRE, business risk exposure, that's the asset criticality that we talked about earlier. And wouldn't it be great if you had a work order matrix? A lot of organizations just have work order priority 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you have 500 work orders in the backlog, is that range adequate for ranking the entire backlog? If you have a formal matrix created, it self-populates at something I call a ranking value, and every night at midnight, an automation script can automatically populate the backlog. Okay. So at the very bottom, ISO 55000 talks about the asset management policy, strategic asset management plan. And then, of course, from that, you create the lower level asset management plans by asset class, category, or the individual asset itself. Now, so having said that, this is my idea for industry best practice knowledge and how it should influence CMMS design. Organizations, if the people on this call right now, well, I'm aware of a problem down here that is preventing us from, we don't have a data quality plan. We don't have a reliability team. We don't have a bad actor report. We're certainly not capturing a 3-piece failure mode. And this automated weekly schedule is a pipe dream. Okay, well, there can be cracks down here, and you need to be aware of those things and then develop a plan to address those over time. So I mentioned the long-range plan. This is a precursor to creating a long-range plan. I was at this one location. It was actually a university, and I mentioned to the director level there that in our next workshop, I want to start talking about all of the business improvement initiatives that could possibly go into a long-range plan. And so, I expected to show up at that meeting. It was just the three of us, and I didn't know what they were going to have to show me. So we arrive in that office, and the director opens up his desk drawer and pulls out a long list of business improvement initiatives. So I was impressed. These guys were prepared. They were ready to discuss this. And so we got into it, and we combined the initiatives that they have with existing challenges, problems, issues, call them opportunities in the organization. And then that gave us a complete laundry list of things that need to be targeted. So then the conversation becomes, well, what do we want to do in the next 12 months? Okay. And we start brainstorming that. And then what do you want to do beyond that? Now, I'm showing a pretty picture here on this slide that has the target years 2, 3, 4, and 5. This didn't happen in that session. It was maybe a week, 2 weeks later where we finally had enough clarity to spell it out in this manner. And the other point to be made here is that this is, again, quite preliminary. Once you load it into a schedule, establish a critical path, and perform resource leveling, these things can move around. I mean, whatever was in year 1 may now be in year 2, so on and so forth. So, but it helps to have this idea roughly as to where you would start. So, again, I was assessing an organization here just recently, and they had no core team. And so ad hoc requests for improving, altering, modifying the CMMS were going straight to the IT department, and they were responsible for altering the system. But if you were them and you were receiving such a request, would not your first thought be, well, I better check with all other users in the system, functional users, to make sure that they are okay with this change? And so the onus is on the IT department. Well, that's, in my mind, it should be a functional group that performs that analysis and then submits the change, if needed, to the IT group. Business analysts, if you had such a role, would visit the working level once a month, and they might be the first person to know if there's a culture problem. Culture meaning lack of buy-in to the maintenance management system and process. Not everyone will always be 100% on board, And so, in fairness, the business analyst might identify, well, we never properly trained these people. Okay. Or the click count, I call it, to perform this particular action in the system is too difficult. We need an easier process. Maybe a mobile solution would help. Upkeep has a mobile solution for their CMMS. There's the data quality plan, a gatekeeper role. If you did a search right now on the internet, let's search for CMMS bad data. Those 3 words, you hit the enter key, I don't know, you might get 50,000 hits. It's bad. And so almost every industry in the world using a CMMS complains about the poor data. I'm saying, after 3 decades, why don't we do something about this? And the only way you're going to get accurate data, you just can't make every field mandatory. It still won't work. You need to get a gatekeeper role who will perform a second check on all incoming work. And furthermore, let's have that person do something new that's never been done before. Let's have them enter a rough estimate on all new work before the planners even plan it. Now, if you did that, you would now have, at some point, maybe a month from now, a backlog that is 100% estimated, not planned, but estimated. Now, what could you do with that? Well, we know the availability in the worker craft level. We could do automatic resource leveling. Yeah. And we could run a backlog size report by craft showing the not just work order counts, but now we could show craft estimates. Okay, and once a job is formally planned, it would override the rough estimate, of course. But that could be a conversation people might want to get more detail on. All right, foundation data. I've never been to one site that had perfect foundation data, so there's always going to be an issue there. The prioritization, the work order matrix, the ranking, work types can be followed up. So corrective maintenance, PM. Do you have something for modification and project work? Yep. Status synonyms can be a little bit odd sometimes. And there's also something called proactive error checking. Are you aware that in your system right now, there is a status of in progress, maybe, and that job was started 9 months ago, but it's the status on it is in progress. But if you also look at the last reported actual man hour, it was 6 months ago. So this thing is done 99% probability, but it was not properly completed and closed. And so unless someone does this proactive error check, you will never discover this. It's sort of like in the world of maintenance, we call this a hidden failure. All right. You got to have accurate data if you're going to do accurate reporting. All right. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but this is just the first year targets. And the benefits are we're going to optimize return on asset, focus resources on the worst offenders, maximize usage of craft resources and backlog reduction, minimize plant downtime. That's always a good thing. Ensure data quality is in support of accurate reporting, link inputs to outputs, and ensure that staff has proper training. We're not just training on the CMMS software, but let's be fair to the trades and make sure that they also have proper training on something called precision maintenance and the ability to identify defects and failure modes in the plant. So out of all this, someone asked the question earlier, wouldn't it be great if every asset management stakeholder, and hopefully that's a lot of you on this call, in your office or cubicle right now, you had a long-range plan sitting on that wall, showing you where you are and where you want to go. So next time someone walks into your office and says, "What's this?" You are quick to respond and organized in your thoughts as to what should be done, what needs to be done, and why. What's in it for me? Okay, create a culture of reliability. Wouldn't that be wonderful? All righty. Well, I've wasted a full hour of your time almost, and this is your last chance to give us any questions.
Reminder, everybody, you can post those questions in the questions tab. We'll just give it a quick minute for any last minute questions. If not, let's see if anything comes in.
And my email's there at the bottom. Yeah.
All right. I don't see any additional questions coming in, so I think we can move to the next slide. I just want to thank everybody so much for joining us today. A quick reminder, if you could just please fill out that survey so we can make sure to keep providing you with really awesome, interesting, engaging sessions like this one and answer all of your questions. Thank you so much for your questions today. I think we already have some ideas for some potential follow-up sessions, so be on the lookout for that. I'll be sending you a follow-up email after this with additional resources, as well as the recording to this session, as well as a link to our upcoming webinar on the topic of preventive maintenance. So make sure you register for that. Again, just please take that survey, and thank you all so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure. Thank you for all of your wonderful questions, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much, John.
All right, take care.